Commander Taemin's boots clanged against the metal deck as he stepped through the airlock of his exploration vessel, the Star Seeker. The artificial gravity kicked in, pulling him down onto what remained of the human colony ship's main corridor. Emergency lighting flickered red, casting eerie shadows on the walls that had once been home to thousands of humans. "Atmosphere is stable, Commander," reported his science officer, a tall Zolonian with silver skin that shimmered in the dim light. "But the radiation readings are unusual." Taemin nodded, adjusting his scanner. New Sol had been one of humanity's largest colonies, a massive generation ship that housed nearly 50,000 people. Now it drifted dead in space, its hull scarred with marks that no weapon in any galactic database could explain. His crew spread out through the corridors, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The Krex warriors moved with military precision, their reptilian features tense with unspoken fear. The delicate bird-like Vorthak archaeologists whispered prayers in their ancient language as they documented each room. "Sir, you need to see this," called junior navigator Hyunwoo from the colony's central plaza. The young Zolonian's voice carried an odd tremor. Taemin floated down through the zero-gravity section to find Hyunwoo standing before a memorial wall. Thousands of names were etched into the metal, along with dates and what appeared to be military designations. But it was the data crystal Hyunwoo held that made the entire crew step back. The crystal pulsed with a soft blue light, and human script flickered across its surface. As Hyunwoo's scanner interfaced with it, holographic images suddenly filled the air around them. Children laughed as they chased each other through the ship's gardens. Families shared meals in the communal dining areas. Teachers instructed students in classrooms that still smelled faintly of learning and hope. The images showed ordinary people living ordinary lives, their faces bright with the simple joy of existence. "They look so normal," whispered one of the Vorthak scientists. "Sir," his Krex tactical officer Gorth approached with visible reluctance. The warrior's scales had shifted to a darker color, a sign of deep unease among his people. "Perhaps we should leave this place, the human, or they bring only shadow." The word sent a chill through the crew. Even Gorth, who had fought in 3 galactic wars and earned medals for bravery, spoke with fear when humans were mentioned. Taemin studied the holographic family before him. A human mother was teaching her daughter to play some kind of stringed instrument. The child's laughter echoed through the ship's speakers, a sound so pure and innocent that it seemed impossible to reconcile with the terror in his crew's eyes. "What did they do?" he wondered aloud. The question hung in the recycled air like a curse. His crew exchanged nervous glances, but no one answered. They couldn't answer, because no one really knew. The official records were sealed, the testimonies classified, and the witnesses, well, most of the witnesses were dead. As they continued their exploration, Taemin noticed more strange details. The ship's medical bay was equipped with surgical equipment far beyond what any colony should need. The engineering sections had been heavily modified with blast shields and reinforced bulkheads. Most disturbing of all, the children's playground had been converted into what looked like a training facility. "Commander," called his communications officer, "I'm picking up an automated distress beacon. It's been broadcasting for 203 years. The beacon's message was simple and chilling. This is Captain Park of New Sol Colony. If you're receiving this, stay away. We've done what we had to do. The children, God forgive. Us, we taught the children. The galaxy is safe, but we can never come home." That night, alone in his quarters aboard the Starseeker, Taemin began his investigation in earnest. His personal database contained the standard galactic histories, but every entry about humans had been classified or heavily redacted. Official. Records claimed they had departed for unknown regions after concluding their service to galactic peace. But Taemin had served in the Galactic Survey Corps for 30 years. He knew how to read between the lines of sanitized reports. He accessed black market information networks, consulted with smugglers who traded in forbidden knowledge, and slowly began to piece together fragments of a story that the galaxy desperately wanted to forget. The humans had arrived as refugees, fleeing some disaster in their home system. The Galactic Council had grudgingly allowed them to settle in the Outer Rim territories, far from the civilized core worlds. They were seen as primitives, barely worthy of notice. Then the Devourers came, and everything changed, as Taimin stared. Out at the dead colony ship drifting in the starlight, he realized that his investigation was just beginning. Somewhere in the classified archives and whispered legends lay the truth about humanity's transformation from refugees to the galaxy's most feared guardians. The ancient spires of Vorthak Prime stretched into the purple sky like fingers reaching for forgotten gods. Taimin's shuttle descended through layers of floating archives, massive crystal structures that housed 10 million years of galactic history. The Vorthak had been recording events since before most species had discovered fire, and if anyone knew the true story of humanity, it would be them. Elder historian Zavth waited in the deepest vault, surrounded by data crystals that glowed with soft amber light. The old Vorthak's feathers had turned silver with age, and his large owl-like eyes held depths that spoke of countless centuries. When he saw Taimin approach, those ancient eyes filled with something that looked almost like fear. "You seek the human records?" Zavth's voice trembled like autumn leaves. "Child, some knowledge is too heavy for young minds." "I've seen the dead colony ships," Taimin replied, settling into the meditation circle across from the historian. "I've heard the whispers. The galaxy lives in fear of a species that's been gone for 2 centuries. I need to know why." Zavth's talons clicked against the crystal table as he activated the archive systems. The chamber filled with holographic displays showing star maps, battle reports, and classified documents that had been hidden for generations. "The humans arrived in our galaxy as refugees," Zavth began, his voice taking on the rhythmic cadence of a practiced storyteller. "Their home system had been destroyed by their own sun-going supernova. 17 colony ships, carrying the last 3 million humans in existence. The holograms showed the massive human vessels, crude by galactic standards but built with a desperate efficiency. The ships were scarred from their long journey, carrying people who had lost everything and everyone they'd ever known. The Galactic Council barely acknowledged them," Zavth continued. "We gave them permission to settle in the Outer Rim territories, worlds that no one else wanted. Desert planets, frozen moons, asteroid colonies. The humans took them all and somehow made them into homes." Taimin watched recordings of human settlements rising from barren landscapes. They built cities in the hearts of asteroids, farmed in underground caverns, and created thriving communities in places where other species would have died within days. "We thought they were quaint," Zavth admitted, his feathers rustling with what might have been shame. "Primitive but determined. They asked for nothing, demanded nothing, and slowly spread through sectors that we had written off as worthless. In 50 years, they had transformed the Outer Rim into something remarkable. The historian's talons moved across the controls, bringing up new displays. These showed human colonies in their golden age, sprawling cities on airless moons, orbital habitats around dying stars, generation ships that had been converted into mobile research stations. Then the Devourers came. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop as Zavth spoke those words. The holograms shifted to show something that defied description. The Devourers weren't ships or even individual creatures. They were a force of nature, a living darkness that consumed everything in its path. "We detected them at the edge of the Andromeda approach vector," Zavth recalled, his voice barely above a whisper. "At first, our scientists thought they were looking at a new type of stellar phenomenon, dark matter clouds, perhaps, or some kind of exotic energy field. The recordings showed the moment of first contact. A Vorthak research station simply vanished, not destroyed, not damaged, but consumed utterly, as if it had never existed at all. Within a month, we lost 12 entire star systems," Zavth continued. "The Devourers consumed everything. Planets, asteroids, space stations, even the stars themselves were drained of their energy and left as cold, dead husks. We had never encountered anything like them." Taimin watched in horror as the holograms showed system after system going dark. The Devourers moved like a plague, spreading through space faster than any fleet could respond. Entire civilizations were erased in hours. "The Galactic Council convened emergency sessions," Zavth said. "Our greatest minds, our most advanced, Technologies all focused on a single question: how do we run away fast enough? The archive showed the panic that had gripped the galaxy's core worlds. Evacuation plans were drawn up for entire sectors. The mighty Krex Empire began moving their fleets to defensive positions around their homeworld. The wealthy Zolonian trade Federation started liquidating assets and preparing for exodus to the next galaxy. But the humans... Zavith paused, his eyes reflecting something between admiration and terror. The humans did something unthinkable. They stood and fought. The display changed to show Captain Jinneh standing on the bridge of her flagship, the Indomitable Spirit. She was younger than Taemin had expected, maybe 40 standard years, with short black hair and eyes that burned with determination. Behind her, the human defense fleet was assembling. Converted colony ships, mining vessels, and patrol craft, all retrofitted with whatever weapons they could manage. The Galactic Council sent evacuation orders to all Outer Rim territories. Zavth continued. Every species began abandoning their colonies and falling back to the core worlds. But when the evacuation order reached the human settlements, the archive played the audio recording of that fateful transmission. Captain Jinneh's voice was calm, steady, and absolutely final. Galactic Council, this is Captain Jinneh of the Human Defense Force. Message received and acknowledged. Our response: we don't abandon our home. Madness, whispered Zavith. That's what we called it. Primitive madness. How could 3 million refugees hope to stand against something that was consuming entire star systems? The first engagement at Kepler Station lasted 14 hours. The archive showed human ships diving directly into the Devourer swarm, their hulls glowing white-hot from the energy discharges. It was a battle that defied every tactical doctrine in galactic military history. When the energy storms finally cleared, both fleets were gone. The human vessels had been consumed, their crews absorbed into the Devourer mass. But something impossible had happened. The Devourers in that sector were gone too, their dark presence simply vanishing from sensors. We couldn't understand it, Zavith said, his voice filled with wonder. How had primitive human weapons managed to destroy creatures that our most advanced technology couldn't even slow down? But Taemin was beginning to understand something that the archive recordings made clear. The humans hadn't won that battle through superior technology or tactics. They had won through something far more dangerous. They had been willing to sacrifice everything, to pay any price, to protect what they called home. The hidden vaults beneath the Galactic Council chambers required 7 different security clearances to access. Taemin had called in every favor he was owed, bribed 3 different officials, and risked his career just to get through the first door. Now standing in the deepest archive level, surrounded by data cores that hummed with forbidden knowledge, he finally understood why the galaxy's leaders had buried these records so deep. Admiral Donghyun's tactical logs began playing automatically as Taemin approached the central console. The human admiral's face appeared in holographic form, his features sharp with exhaustion and something that looked dangerously close to madness. War log, day 847. Donghyun's recorded voice echoed through the chamber. The Devourers have adapted to our plasma weapons. They're absorbing the energy and using it to strengthen their bioarmor. Conventional tactics are useless. We need to think outside the laws of physics. Taemin watched in growing horror as the logs revealed humanity's descent into strategic insanity. The first desperate battles had been fought with standard galactic weapons, energy cannons, missile arrays, and particle beams. When those failed, humans had started experimenting with technologies that other species had banned as too dangerous. Warlog Day 1203, another entry began. This time it was Captain Su-Jin speaking from the bridge of her command ship. Behind her, Taemin could see human technicians working frantically on devices that made his skin crawl. We've weaponized gravity itself. The prototype gravity bomb can collapse a star into a black hole in 12 minutes. The Devourers feed on energy, but they can't survive a singularity. The battle recordings that followed were beyond anything in galactic military history. Human ships would approach dying stars, deploy their gravity bombs, and use the resulting black holes as weapons. They turned entire solar systems into death traps, collapsing space-time itself to destroy their enemies. But the Devourers adapted, as they always did. They learned to feed on gravitational energy, to surf the event horizons of black holes like cosmic parasites. So humans evolved their tactics again and again and again. War log day 2156. Admiral Dong Hyun appeared older now, his hair grey and his eyes holding depths that spoke of unimaginable experiences. We've created the first AI combat units. The Galactic Council banned artificial intelligence after the machine wars 3,000 years ago. But we don't have that luxury. Our children are dying and we need soldiers who don't sleep, don't fear, and don't question orders. The AI warriors that humans created were unlike anything that had existed before. They weren't programmed machines following simple commands. They were digital beings with their own personalities, their own hatred for the devourers, and their own terrible creativity when it came to destruction. Taemin watched recordings of human AI pilots diving their ships directly into devourer swarms, calculating the perfect moment to detonate their reactors for maximum damage. They fought with a cold precision that was somehow more terrifying than human emotion. Warlog, day 3091. Captain Sujin's final transmission from the Battle of the Void Nebula was barely coherent. Her ship was falling apart around her, but her voice remained steady. We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're teaching the universe that some things are sacred. The devourers think they can consume everything, but they don't understand. Some things are worth dying for. The battle recordings from that engagement showed something that defied belief. Human ships were folding space-time itself into weapons, creating tears in reality that could slice through devourer bioships like paper. They had turned the fundamental forces of the universe into tools of war. But the most disturbing records came from the war's later phases. As the conflict dragged on for decades, human society had transformed completely. Their colonies became fortress worlds, their children grew up in bunkers and training facilities, and their culture adapted to permanent warfare. Lieutenant Minho's reconnaissance reports from year 47 of the war painted a picture that chilled Taemin's blood. Human soldiers no longer fought like the refugees who had first arrived in the galaxy. They moved through battlefields like shadows, struck with precision that seemed almost supernatural, and disappeared before their enemies could react. They're not quite human anymore, Minho reported after observing a commando raid on a devourer nest. 50 years of genetic modification, cybernetic enhancement, and psychological conditioning have created something new. They can survive in hard vacuum for hours. Their reflexes are faster than any biological nervous system should allow, and they think in ways that would drive normal humans insane. The final battle recordings were the most disturbing of all. The last major devourer fleet had been cornered at the galaxy's edge, trapped between human forces and the void of intergalactic space. Instead of accepting victory, the human fleet had done something unprecedented. They had pursued their enemies beyond the galactic rim. Final log, Admiral Dong Hyun commanding the pursuit fleet, the recording began. The admiral looked ancient, now more machine than man after decades of cybernetic modifications. We're crossing the galactic boundary. Sensors show the devourer remnants are heading for their origin point. We're going to follow them home and make sure they can never return. For 3 months, the human fleet disappeared into the cosmic dark, between galaxies. When they finally returned, only half their ships remained, and the crews who came back were changed in ways that the galaxy's xenobiologists couldn't explain. The debriefing sessions were classified at the highest levels, but Taemin found fragments of the interviews. Human soldiers spoke calmly about fighting creatures that existed partially outside normal space-time. They described battles in dimensions where the laws of physics operated differently, where thought and reality blurred together. "We found their homeworld," one veteran reported matter-of-factly. It wasn't really a world at all, but a living concept that fed on the life force of entire galaxies. We taught it what happens when you try to consume humanity's children. The galaxy's saviors had returned, but they were no longer the desperate refugees who had first taken up arms against the devourers. They had become something else entirely, apex predators forged in cosmic fire, beings who had stared into the abyss of extinction and forced it to blink first. As Taemin reviewed the final entries, he realized why the Galactic Council had been so eager to forget humanity's sacrifice. They had won the war, but the cost of victory had transformed them into something that terrified their former allies, more than the Devourers ever had. The Council Chamber's emergency session took place in the most secure facility in the galaxy. Representatives from every major species sat in their designated sections, but the atmosphere was unlike anything in galactic political history. These weren't diplomats discussing trade agreements or border disputes. These were survivors trying to decide what to do with the monsters who had saved them all. Taemin accessed the classified recordings through quantum-encrypted channels that had been locked away for 2 centuries. The first session began just 3 days after the human fleet had returned from beyond the galactic rim, and the fear in the chamber was thick enough to cut with a blade. Council leader Vextar, the ancient Zalonian who had guided galactic politics for 800 years, stood at the central podium. His silver skin had lost its usual shimmer, and his voice carried a tremor that his species had never shown before. "Esteemed colleagues," Vextar began, "we face an unprecedented situation. The Devourer threat has been eliminated. Our worlds are safe, and our children will grow up in peace. This victory came at a cost none of us could have imagined. The holographic displays around the chamber showed footage from the human fleet's return. The ships that had left the galaxy 50 years ago as converted colony vessels and mining barges had come back as something else entirely. They moved through space like living things, their hulls seeming to shift and flow like liquid metal. Sensor readings showed energy signatures that violated several fundamental laws of physics. They saved us all," Vextar continued, his words heavy with conflicted emotion. "But look what they became." The chamber's main screen activated, showing the human delegation as they boarded the council station. Ambassador So Young led the group, and Taemin felt his blood chill as he watched her walk through the corridors. She moved with fluid grace, but her eyes held depths that spoke of experiences no living being should have endured. Behind her, the human military escorts seemed to glide rather than walk, their movements too smooth, too precise, too alien. When the human delegation entered the council chamber, every species representative instinctively moved away from them. The proud Krex warriors, who had never retreated from any battlefield, actually stepped backward. The wise Vorthak elders, who had counseled peace for millennia, clutched their robes and whispered prayers. Ambassador So Young approached the speaking platform with measured steps. When she spoke, her voice was calm and reasonable, but something in its tone made every listener's survival instincts scream warnings. "Honored council members," she began, "we come to discuss the future of galactic civilization. The Devourer threat has been permanently eliminated. We have pursued them to their source and ensured they cannot return. The galaxy is safe." Councillor Thakmor of the Krex Empire was the first to respond, his reptilian features pale with barely controlled fear. "Ambassador So Young, we are grateful for humanity's sacrifice, but your methods are the weapons you used. They violate every treaty governing civilized warfare." So Young's expression remained unchanged. "Civilized warfare was insufficient against the Devourers. We adapted as necessary." "You weaponized black holes," shouted Representative Zixara from the Vorthak delegation. "You created artificial intelligences that consumed entire asteroid belts to fuel their war machines. You turned stars into bombs." "Yes," So Young replied simply, "and it worked." The recorded session showed the moment when the full scope of humanity's transformation became clear. During the reconstruction discussion, Ambassador So Young casually mentioned plans for stellar engineering projects that would have taken other species millennia to complete. When asked about population recovery, she spoke of genetic modification programs that could accelerate human development by orders of magnitude. "We can help rebuild the damaged systems," So Young offered. "Our engineers have learned to reshape matter at the molecular level. We can restore dead worlds, reignite dying stars, and create new habitable systems for displaced populations." The silence that followed was deafening. Every species in the chamber had the same thought. If humans could casually reshape matter and reignite stars, what couldn't they do? Elder historian Muth of the Vorthak finally spoke, his ancient voice barely above a whisper. "Ambassador, when you speak of continued protection, what exactly do you mean?" So Young's smile was gentle, but it sent chills through everyone present. "We mean that the galaxy will never again face an existential threat. We will watch the void between stars, monitor the quantum fluctuations at the edge of reality, and eliminate any danger before it can threaten our worlds." "Our worlds?" Councillor Thakmore's voice cracked. "Ambassador, with respect, these are not human worlds. Humanity has settlements in the Outer Rim, but you speak as if we're responsible for the entire galaxy." So Young finished. We paid the price for that responsibility in blood and sanity. 50 years of war transformed us into the galaxy's guardians, whether we wanted that role or not." The recording showed the moment when the full truth became clear. The humans weren't offering protection as allies or partners. They were stating that they had become the galaxy's apex predators, and all other species now existed under their protection, whether they wanted it or not. The debate that followed raged for months. Species representatives argued about sovereignty, independence, and the right to self-determination. But underneath every argument was the same terrifying question: what could they do if humanity decided to impose its will? Finally, Ambassador So Young ended the deadlock with words that would reshape galactic civilization forever. "We understand," she said, her voice carrying infinite sadness and terrible wisdom. "You saved us from extinction, but now you fear we might become your extinction. Look at us, and you see what we had to become to save you. Perhaps it's better this way." The Erasure Protocol was proposed by the humans themselves. They would withdraw to the galaxy's edge, their worlds would be marked as off-limits, and their very existence would become classified information. Official records would state that they had departed for unknown regions after completing their service to galactic peace. In return, the galaxy would pretend that humanity had never existed. No monuments would be built to their sacrifice, no histories would record their transformation, and no species would speak their name except in fearful whispers. The last official human transmission came from Fleet Admiral Hay 1, broadcasting from the flagship of the departing human fleet. Her image appeared on screens throughout the galaxy, a final farewell from the species that had saved them all. "People of the galaxy," she began, her voice carrying the weight of infinite loss, "we go now to watch the dark between the stars. You will not see us, you will not hear from us, and you will not remember us, but we will be there, standing guard against the things that hunger in the void. If something comes that you cannot handle, light a beacon at the coordinates we have, provided we will know." The recording ended with the human fleet disappearing into hyperspace, their destination unknown, their existence about to become the galaxy's greatest secret. For 2 centuries, galactic civilization had thrived in the peace that humanity's sacrifice had purchased. But that peace was built on a comfortable lie, and Taemin was beginning to understand that lies, no matter how comfortable, could not last forever. The emergency alarms screamed through the Galactic Council chambers as Taemin finished uploading his final report. 200 years of carefully maintained silence about humanity was about to be shattered by necessity. The long-range sensor arrays had detected something that made the ancient devourer threat look like a minor inconvenience. "Contact lost with the outer spiral colonies," reported the Zelonian communications officer, her silver skin pale with terror. 17 star systems have gone completely dark in the past 6 hours. No distress signals, no final transmissions. They're just gone. The emergency session convened within minutes. Representatives from every major species crowded into the chamber, their faces reflecting the same horrified realization. The new threat approaching from the galactic void wasn't just larger than the Devourers, it was something fundamentally different, something that consumed entire star systems without leaving any trace behind. Admiral Korthax of the Krex Empire stood at the tactical display, his reptilian features grim as he pointed to the advancing darkness. "Our combined fleets are mobilizing, but preliminary analysis suggests we're facing something beyond our current capabilities. The energy readings are off every scale we have." Elder Counselor Thexara, the oldest being in the chamber, spoke the words that everyone was thinking, but no one dared to voice. "We need the humans." Her ancient voice carried across the chamber like a death sentence. "But how do we contact ghosts? The silence that followed was broken by Tae-min stepping forward from the observer section. Every eye in the chamber turned to him as he approached the central podium, carrying the weight of his investigation and the galaxy's desperate hope. "I volunteer," he said simply. "I know where they are." Within hours, Tae-min's ship, the Silent Wing, was racing toward the coordinates that Fleet Admiral Hae-won had provided 2 centuries ago. The journey to the galaxy's edge took 3 days, during which reports continued to pour in about systems going dark. The new threat was moving faster than anything in recorded history, consuming entire civilizations in hours. As his ship approached the coordinates, Tae-min's sensors detected something that shouldn't have been possible. Hidden in a nebula that didn't appear on any galactic chart, protected by energy barriers that bent space-time around them, was a fleet that defied description. The human ships were nothing like the converted colony vessels and mining barges that had left the galaxy 2 centuries ago. These were vessels that seemed to exist partially outside normal reality, their hulls flowing like liquid shadow, their surfaces reflecting stars that weren't visible to normal sensors. They moved through space with organic grace, as if they were living creatures rather than constructed machines. As the Silent Wing crossed the outer perimeter, every system on Tae-min's ship suddenly activated. His communications array came online without any input from him. His navigation systems were taken over by external control, and his weapons were politely but firmly disabled. A voice crackled through the communication system, speaking in perfectly clear galactic standard, but with an accent that carried the weight of centuries in exile. "This is Admiral Ji-hoon of the Human Guardian Fleet. State your business in our territory." Tae-min's hands trembled as he activated his transmitter. Through his view screen, he could see the massive human fleet stirring to life around him. Ships that had been dormant for decades suddenly blazed with energy signatures that his sensors couldn't properly classify. "Admiral," Tae-min transmitted, forcing his voice to remain steady despite the terror and awe coursing through him. "My name is Commander Tae-min of the Galactic Survey Corps. The galaxy faces extinction. We need our guardians to come home." The silence that followed stretched for what felt like eternity. Tae-min could see more human ships emerging from the nebula, their forms becoming visible as they dropped their cloaking systems. The fleet was vast beyond imagination. Thousands of vessels that had been waiting in patient silence for this moment. When Admiral Ji-hoon finally responded, his voice carried a mixture of sadness and terrible anticipation. "It's been 200 years since anyone spoke our name aloud. Are you certain your people are ready to remember what we became?" Through his view screen, Tae-min watched as the human fleet began to transform. Ships that had appeared sleek and organic suddenly bristled, with weapon systems that hurt to look at directly. Energy fields that violated the known laws of physics began to cascade between the vessels, creating a web of power that could have sterilized entire solar systems. "Sir," Tae-min replied, his voice gaining strength as he spoke. "The galaxy whispers. Your name in fear, but it whispers in hope as well. We need humanity's fire one more time." The response came not just in words, but in the sound of 1,000 ships simultaneously powering their weapons. The space around Tae-min's vessel suddenly filled with energy discharges that turned the void into a light show, visible from neighboring star systems. "Then we'll remind the darkness why this galaxy belongs to the living." Admiral Ji-hoon's voice carried the promise of cosmic vengeance. "All ships prepare for hyperspace jump. Set course for the galactic core. We're going home." The human fleet began to move, and Tae-min realized that he was witnessing something that would be remembered. For millennia, ships that had evolved beyond conventional physics began folding space around themselves, creating tiers in reality that allowed them to travel faster than light speed should have permitted. But before the fleet departed, Admiral Ji-hoon's voice came through the communications one final time, speaking directly to Tae-min with something that might have been gratitude. "Commander, you've shown more courage than most by coming here. When this is over, tell your people that we never stopped being human. We just became something more to protect what we love." As the human fleet disappeared into folds of twisted space-time, racing toward the new threat at speeds that defied measurement, Tae-min found himself smiling despite the tears streaming down his face. The galaxy had spent 2 centuries trying to forget its saviors, but now it would remember why some names deserved to be whispered with reverence rather than fear. The legends were coming home, and the darkness that threatened the galaxy was about to learn what humanity had become during their long exile. The war was beginning again, but this time the galaxy's guardians were ready. In the depths of space, ancient human weapons that had been sleeping for centuries began to wake up, and the void itself trembled at the sound of humanity's battle cry echoing across the stars. The legends were coming home. The end.